Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our event today. I'm Jill Cronin. I am Director of Operations at the 5% Club. For those of you who don't know anything about the club, we've got a real mixture today of members and non-members. So I'll go through this for the non-members. We are a skills campaigning charity that was started in 2013 by Leo Quinn, who is now Group Chief Executive at Balfour Beatty. And Leo saw two things in the marketplace going on. He saw very high youth unemployment and a lack of people coming into the workplace with the right skills or being trained. So Leo set up the 5% Club, which was about going out to fellow CEOs and saying, commit to having 5% of your workforce in earn and learn, apprentices, people on grad programs and sponsored students. And since that, the movement's just grown and grown. We've got nearly 500 members. I think it's also, quite sad in many ways that today we look and we're facing again the whole issue about very high youth unemployment. So it's certainly more relevant than ever. And I think we all know that certain groups fare far worse in these sorts of situations, certain groups and diverse backgrounds. And certainly the whole BAME, people from BAME backgrounds have even bigger barriers for the general youth issue, for the unemployment that we are facing. Our club events are usually face-to-face and we usually get together. Obviously we've moved online and we've had great support. We've done them to date with partners, and today is our first one solo. I'm being helped by Brian Reddick, who does our IT. So thank you to Brian. So bear with us, and we'd love feedback because we've had to mastermind this from beginning to end. Usually our partners help us. We do have more than 166 attendees. Hopefully you're all in the process of joining us at the moment. Our format, I want to say thank you to all our speakers for joining us today. Our format is going to be each speaker is going to present for 10 minutes. It's going to be a specific 5-minute Q&A for them. And then at the end, I'm going to field questions and answers to all our speakers. In terms of housekeeping, just to repeat the little message in chat, this event is being recorded, will be on our website in a few days' time, and freely available, so please share it with your network and with your colleagues. And adaptive presentations will also be shared out with all attendees. All our attendees are on mute with no video, and that will be the same throughout the whole event. If you wish to ask questions, and we really want you to ask questions of all our speakers, please use the Q&A facility that's at the bottom of your screen. Just go in there and post a question, and I'll do my best to keep on top of that and to keep trawling through it and make sure I pick everything up. And if anything ends up in chat, I'll pick that up as well. I'll do my best to be between the two. We also would love you to tweet today. We have a particular hashtag. Brian, if you don't mind bringing that on my Twitter slide, if that's all right. So anyway, it's in chat as well. There it is. So if you'd like to tweet, we'd love you to as well. And last but not least, just to say our membership is free, and hence we've got lots of members and non-members on this today. Please join the movement. We really want you to come and join in and just to create a really big movement, a really big commitment to earn and learn and all the associated issues with it, such as the whole diversity, inclusion piece, social mobility. This brings me on now, without much ado, onto our speakers. So our first speaker is Paul Evans. Paul is the CEO of Leadership Through Sport and Business and became the permanent CEO, I think correct, Paul, in June. He's an extremely experienced third sector leader, and he's worked across a wide range of areas, including youth provision. So Paul, I'll leave it to you to start your presentation. And as I say, if anyone wants to post questions, please do.
Okay, thank you very much, Jill, for that. So I actually joined in April during lockdown. So during lockdown and somewhat locked in, like many of us, working from bedrooms and different things. So pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the charity, but before that, Jill has asked me to just set the scene somewhat into the context and the landscape that we're operating within. So it appears to me as we sit here today that we have to accept that we are coming off the back of a health, a social and economic crisis, thanks to COVID. And we know things have changed, and we're trying to prepare and ready ourselves for that change, but we don't quite know the full extent of that change and its implications. There are some things, though, that we do know. Youth unemployment levels, as Jill pointed out at the beginning, are set to rise. It's going to become a youth unemployment crisis. We're heading towards 1 million levels that we saw in 2008 during the recession. If you were finding it hard as a young person then, facing all sorts of disadvantage, especially low socioeconomic status, or if you were from defined BAME groups, you're going to find it even harder now, and we need to do something about that. So that's a massive issue. In fact, 250,000 more young people are claiming employment support benefits since March, such as the challenge here. Black Lives Matter and a higher focus on the treatment and representation of underrepresented BAME groups has created a much needed awareness to concentrate on diversity, on inclusivity, to take explicit action to increase all sorts of diversity within businesses and organisations. In fact, communities at large are being challenged to demonstrate the commitment to being anti-racist and taking necessary steps to prove it. All of this is happening together. And we're seeing employers who are offering 32% less opportunities in apprenticeships and school leaver programs. So it's already a harder landscape in so many different ways. And of course, many of us are in the knowledge that so many organisations and companies have actually done very well out of this. Some people are thriving and becoming more profitable out of this crisis. And that's not so much to point the finger at, but as to say there's a responsibility on organisations to think about now becoming more diverse, inclusive, and stronger contributors to their communities, especially as we look to rebuild the economy. If we are seeing poor diversity levels and barriers to BAME groups and other groups at entry-level job and opportunities, then it's obvious we're going to see poor diversity at senior levels and board levels later on in careers, and that's what we're seeing right now. So we know that if you are a more diverse organisation, you're probably more creative, more energised, more innovative, and more reflective of your customer base. So, we are looking as a charity, and I'll explain a little bit more of how we encourage businesses to do that, to take action and contribute to social mobility, which for me is one of the keys to the economic recovery. We are here, though, to discuss apprenticeships, and we're here because we care. We are people here today that care about widening the participation levels across a group who are poorly represented in apprenticeships, a group for whom there are barriers to entry and progression, and for whom those inequalities are reflected later within the labour market. In fact, the National Learning and Work Institute tell us that white applicants are twice as likely to succeed in their applications for apprenticeships. BAME and female applications and apprentices tend to be clustered into lower level and lower opportunity apprenticeships. And we know that the record of progression into advanced or higher opportunities for BAME candidates is sadly poor. So we know that there's so much to do, and and the fact that we're pulling together webinars like this and we're all here means that there are lots of people wanting to and doing something about it. So we're going to hear some great examples for the rest of this session on what is being done today by businesses that are actively taking steps to become more diverse, that are widening their recruitment practices, that are changing workplace cultures, and trying their best to remove barriers to entry and progress for BAME groups. And in fact, organisations like here at the 5% Club, whose very vision is to pull together networks of employers that value and recognise learn to earn opportunities and see that direct contribution to economic growth through encouraging diversity and inclusion, and especially social mobility. So I said I would say a little bit about the charity that I'm CEO of, having just joined. Since 2012, we've transformed the lives of hundreds of young people, bright young people who face a range of barriers in their life and come from disadvantaged circumstances. We do it in Manchester, in London, in Birmingham, in Liverpool. And right now, like many of us, we're delivering our programs online and virtually. Out of last year's cohort, 77% of our cohorts, and maybe we can flick to another slide now. 77% of our young people were defined as BAME. And that's no accident. That's because of the way we recruit. You know, we recruit in communities where young people need us, where they're eligible for free school meals in the top 30% of deprived areas in the UK. Our gender equity or gender stats are 33%, and we know that's fairly low, and we're trying to increase that, but it's actually high when you think about the industries that we recruit into. So predominantly we recruit, we prepare and support young people from disadvantaged backgrounds into meaningful careers with major firms, usually within accounting and finance, digital and tech. And we deliver a range of pre-apprenticeship boot camps, if you like, and in those few-week boot camps, we have a powerful combination of sport and employability. And in the program, young people benefit from qualifications, from corporate experience days, actually going to corporate premises and seeing buildings that they've probably never seen before, meeting people within those environments that they've never met before. They have CV building workshops. We have employability, skills, and all sorts of leadership lessons and programs aimed at inspiring young people to be confident people, successful learners, and responsible leaders, all with a view of progressing them into meaningful opportunities. If you flick to the next slide, the opportunities that we are progressing young people into, for us, have to be meaningful, have to have some kind of longevity, and have to pay well. Too many times, young people are going into opportunities where they are not paid fairly, where the opportunity does not match their aspiration, their ambition, and their talents. And we don't want young people just to become part of the working poor. You've got to be paid fairly if you're going to have any chance of turning your life around. And if we want apprenticeships to have the same level of prestige given to other qualification routes, then we surely need to pay well, pay fairly, and give young people opportunity to really get on track and flourish within their life. An element of what we do is prepare young people, but we also prepare work for the young people. So we work within organisations through our line management training, where we help organisations adjust their cultures, think differently about how they bring in different types of young people or employees, think about their culture, their work, their practices, with a view to having not just a social mobility program, but an actual integrated program that welcomes all types of young people. Too many times an organisation will recruit a Mohammed and ask him to act like an Oliver, and it's just not fair. And if a business's way of team building is Friday night drinking, they're going to worry about recruiting young Muslim people, for example. And we're having all those honest conversations and shifting cultures and practices within organisations. It's not enough just to push a young person into an opportunity and say go from there. So we support the young people in opportunities for up to 12 months, and we support the businesses to be able to manage that young person and work with them so that they can flourish. Pay fair, pay decent, right opportunities, right culture. Just a quick example or case study, if you like, we've recently launched a partnership with NatWest RBS to recruit 300 young people from diverse backgrounds over the next 3 years in London, Manchester and Edinburgh into their apprenticeship programs, ranging from entry-level programs right through to digital skills degrees. And we're working with them on adjusting their culture and thinking about how they can welcome these young people into their organisation. This was championed by a guy who looked around his floor, said, I'm a white middle-aged man, why does everybody look like me? We've got to do something about it. And knew that the way to do that is to partner with organisations such as ourselves and others who can reach the types of people that they have struggled to reach on their own. So that's a little bit about what we do. I hope that sets some of the context in that landscape, and thank you, and I'll hand back over to you, Jill.
Thanks, Paul. That was really interesting. We've got a question from Eleanor Dealey. Eleanor, thank you. And I'll read it through. Eleanor makes the point very valid. Apprenticeships are frequently not viewed as attractive career routes within BAME communities. How do we convince BAME communities that apprenticeships are a good career choice compared to the university route?
That's a really good point. I think it starts from the way we talk about them, the language you use around them, role models, and raising awareness of the people from those communities that have succeeded and gone through the ranks after an apprenticeship and building their careers. It's certainly about having opportunities that pay well, and I constantly repeat this point that who's going to want to go into an opportunity if their employer pays the absolute minimum for that? So if we want to attract and educate communities that these are great ways to go about, or for your young person to get on the career ladder, then we have to make sure that it is really a great opportunity, paying fairly, career progression, that remove all the barriers and the ridiculous ways of recruitment sometimes that actually put structural barriers in the way of people that would want to get into those opportunities.
And do you use any form of role modelling? I mean, how would you go about that?
Yeah, so we highlight through our imagery, through our case studies, through our work with partners, through our work directly with young people. And when we work with young people on our programs, we also have parent interaction. So we bring them in to see what it's all about, to experience some of the program themselves, to witness what this type of program can do, and how it parallels and is equal to other types of opportunity. And it's not setting one thing up as better than the other. It's just saying this is a valuable opportunity that can help turn your young people's lives around. And some people love to learn and earn, and this is a route to do that. But linking home, schools, communities and businesses together to raise that awareness. We do that. We can always do more, and we're going to do more, but that's how we are addressing that particular concern.
I've got a question from Tony Ellender. What happens in a boot camp? It sounds rather terrifying.
What happens in a boot camp? Maybe it is terrifying, it depends. What tends to happen, there are several different boot camps depending on the pathway. So, for example, our accounting AAT level boot camp will be several weeks, probably 3 months long, where we are having this powerful combination of sport and employability, so the qualifications, but also the preparation for working life. So a range of independent mentors from businesses will come in to deliver leadership skills and mentoring. We will have all sorts of people join our program to deliver CV building workshops, interview skills, and all that type of preparation. So a real tight curriculum, which is about progression through qualifications, progressing through employability certificates and content there, but also out in the world, taking part in corporate experience days. And the sport there is a glue, really. It's the hook. It's a brilliant leveler. It's a universal language. It's a great way of engaging young people. Not all young people, but for some young people. And that, combined with the programs that last for several weeks, ensure the young person is ready to contribute to the organisation they're going into from day one. For our NetWest RBS digital program, it's a 3-week boot camp. So it's a condensed version of that. Young people will also do their sports leaders qualification, referee training, something to say that we've actually gained from doing some of this sport, as well as the natural increases in physical and mental health that come with sport.
Great. And I've got a question. There's lots of questions coming in, and some of them I think we'll keep to the end, just because I think it would be great to have all panelists. They're broader questions than just your presentation. But someone, Alison Tucker's asked, Paul, are you delivering traineeships? How do you make sure BAME individuals access the traineeships? Firstly, are you delivering traineeships?
We are not delivering traineeships. I have done in another world, in another career, and been involved in all the challenges associated with them, as well as the successes, but not right now, so probably not best to contribute to that.
And I just think if we do one more quick one, what do you think more needs to be done at primary school level? This is from David McCormack. I mean, where are you? What age group are you going in at? And presumably primary. Is there anything in primary there? So
not for us, but I will answer the question. So we predominantly work with 16 and upwards, 16 to 24. But the answer, I think, is yes, and it's a great question. I truly believe that you have to start early in terms of opening up the opportunities and how we talk and think about opportunities, which translates through to career services and the kind of information we give young people. But it's always, for me, about linking home, schools and communities together. That's where you raise the potential of young people. That's where you can educate. That's how you can have a consistent language and emphasis on the great opportunities that are available for young people. But certainly starting with in primary, why not?
Yeah. Colleen and someone from Hines Building Services, great questions. I'm going to save those to the end if that's okay, because 12:20 on the dot, we have our next panelist. So thank you, Paul. Thank you for that. hugely interesting, and we'll bring you back in at the end as well, because there's a lot more to talk about. Moves us on to our next speaker, Mark Lomas, who's Head of Equality, Diversity, Inclusion and HR Operations at HS2. I think Mark probably doesn't really need an introduction. His fame goes before him, and I say that for anyone from the 5% Club, because Mark's done so much for us. We had a great event at HS2 last autumn. Mark's been interviewed for one of our expert opinions, which is available for free on our website. But so I don't think I need to say much more about him really, but I will just reference that very recently Mark was named one of the 20 people in People Management's inaugural Diversity and Inclusion Power List. So yet another accolade that he has received, and much deserved. So Mark, over to you, and keep your questions coming through, everyone, and I'll try and field them as best I can.
Great, thank you very much. I think I'll start by saying that I'm going to concentrate on the selection process angle, but I'm happy to take any questions that come up. I think we'll start with that. HS2 are really proud members of the 5% Club, and as of our last annual report, which is published this week, 27% of our staff are earning and learning. So we see that as a key driver for progression over the future. But I'm going to concentrate now on what we do in terms of our apprentice selection. If I can have the next slide, that'd be great. Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about attraction and role design, shortlisting and assessment, and focus on how we embed EDI into each part of that selection process, and then have a look at what we come out the end. I think the key thing to say here is that when organizations are facing a recruitment process or selection process which is consistently not delivering diversity, traditionally the focus has been on changing something about the people. Let's give them more mentoring, let's give them more support, let's give them this, let's give them that. And not enough has been done to look at the actual process and where the holes in that process are. For those of you that have sort of heard me prattle on before, I like to say that you should treat diversity and inclusion like an engineering problem. You should find the point of failure and then fix that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what HS2 does in each of these areas, and what we've done to ensure that our cohorts are really diverse. Up the next slide. Great. So we see immediately that a lot of organizations focus heavily on attraction. They focus heavily on attraction, but they haven't defined the role profiles well enough. They haven't described the way the program operates in an open and an inclusive manner. And just advertising on a diverse range of media isn't really enough. So when we look at the program, we're looking to excite people. What's the opportunity? What's different about coming to HS2? HS2 as a national endeavor, something that's going to be around for the next 20, 25 years, can lead to a career across the industry. Our CEO was formerly an apprentice, so giving people the idea that it doesn't actually matter where you're starting from. Actually come through our apprenticeships program, we'll build the skills, we'll build the confidence, will enable you to go on to a further career. And the really important thing for us is that it's not a corporate voice which is sort of saying these. We have our diverse staff who represent us in case studies, profiles on LinkedIn, social media platforms, etc. And as we go through the processes over the last couple of years, we're getting better and better at that sort of attraction angle. We still have quite a lot further to go in terms of reaching young people. But our applications are very diverse and people are coming through the process, but we still know we can do more. And the key is that what's attracting people to our programs are the people already on them. So they can see that diversity is embedded throughout what we do. They can see diverse role models on our website. They can see case studies, profiles from people who have been in our apprenticeship program, people who have been in our graduate program, talking about how important it is for HS2 that we recruit a diverse cohort. Because in the end, one of our strategic goals is to change representation in the industry. Why? Because we have a skills shortage. So it's part of the reason that we're here, not an add-on. And that message being communicated consistently by young people, by people who reflect diverse communities, and not just corporate statements around equal opportunities, is really very, very important for us. Come to the next slide, Brian. Thank you. This brings us to the selection process as a whole. I'm a big fan of changing selection processes. So we've already removed bias from role profiles, etc. And now we're into how we select people into the program. And at the first stages, for our future talent programs, we use something called blind auditioning. It removes CVs and applications entirely and replaces it with sort of a skills-based assessment, which is aligned to what the apprentice will do in the future. We also use this for work experience and graduates, and we also use it for technical roles in HS2 as well. What we find is that removes bias quite effectively. We're not looking for work experience, for example, or where people have done short-term work, these sorts of things. We're actually looking at the fundamental underlying skills for the job. We find when we apply that to our shortlisting process, diversity automatically comes through that process. And for a lot of organizations, they will find that shortlisting is the point where diverse candidates drop out. And for some as well, at that sort of assessment point, the funnel just decreases. What we find is the funnel is good at the start and really good once we've gone through this sort of blind audition selection process. And the reason for that there are many reasons for it, but one of the key reasons is it builds candidate confidence. I'm completely anonymous when I'm doing this skills test. No one knows who I am, where I've come from. So there's no chance at all of someone thinking I don't have the right background, or I've gone to the wrong school, or I don't have the right work experience. All that is stripped out, and it builds candidate confidence. Can we go on to the next one, Brian? Thank you. Having pulled that diverse cohort through to the second stage of assessment, we then have a very detailed focus on what that assessment looks like. So all assessment materials are reviewed by the EDI team and our external partner, and bias is removed from those assessment exercises. There are a number of assessment exercises that we do during our assessment days: group exercises, interviews, looking at information, distilling key bits of information, providing briefings, etc. And we ensure that any bias or cultural bias is removed, and all assessors have very clear indicators of what they're looking for each exercise. All assessors are trained both in unconscious bias, but each cohort is supported by one of our recruitment staff who's accredited in inclusive recruitment. And the idea there is that they are actively there to challenge decisions, discussions, etc. Exercises are designed with clear success indicators, which recognize cultural variances and remove some things which tend to import bias. So lots of time people will talk about, well, so-and-so didn't keep eye contact with me, and that indicates a lack of confidence, or didn't like the handshake. I'm sure we've all heard these sorts of things before. The exercises are designed to eliminate that type of feedback completely. We are looking for what is right for the role. And then the last part is that we have multiple assessors per exercise. Certainly not a scientific phrase, but it's one I like to use about balancing the bias. So the assessors for each exercise are a diverse cohort in and of themselves. And the wash-up sessions to determine final scorings are also with the assessors who have jointly scored the exercises on on multiple occasions. And therefore that ability to challenge things which may appear as bias or misconception is heightened at that wash-up session to arrive at a sort of diverse cohort to represent HS2 in the future. Can we move on to the next one? Thank you. So I think the a lot of the questions that we get asked are, that takes a significant amount of effort. Everything from the role design, the attraction, the EDI verification of materials, the careful design of assessment centers, the training of the assessors, processes and guidance for washout, for selection, etc., etc., etc. The effort is definitely worth it. We're in an industry where, depending on the stats you look at, the latest from the Mayor of London on infrastructure said something like 6% BAME and 21% women and around 2% disability. And our apprenticeship programs are pulling through fantastic diversity. 44% are BAME, 50% are female, 39% with moderate or substantive adjustments. You can equate that to disability. The reason for that figure is that we ask people what adjustments they need, not whether they consider themselves disabled, and then the declaration rates go right up. And again, a percentage of our cohort is between 30 and 39 years, so not all concentrated on the sort of younger spectrum. So I suppose the overall message is, if you want to pull through a diverse cohort of apprenticeships, of apprentices, you have to avoid death by 1,000 cuts. Mistakes and bias built in at each stage of the selection process will slowly chip away at your funnel until you're left asking, why does it look like that? And my advice is, if you are in that place, take a forensic look at your selection process, where people are dropping out, where the success is, how you're weighting criteria, what criteria you're using. Find that point of failure and change it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. As ever, a great presentation. Great questions coming in. One from Chris Shirley of Network Rail. How will you adapt your diverse recruitment techniques to take into account the switch to remote assessment in the current climate? Big issue for everyone, large or small employer. How do you reach out to people when you can't physically meet them?
Yeah, it is a really, really good question. At the moment, we're doing remote assessment. So we have changed it. Slightly, but we can use technology such as virtual conference technology, etc., to enable us to deliver a similar type of assessment in a virtual environment.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to read the other ones. I'm trying to listen to you and read, which is never a good move. Ian Lindsay asked a really interesting question. When you've got a low number of BAME female senior roles, and possibly, I know with your fantastic stats, may not be exactly true of HS2, but I'm sure in your career you've more than come across this. When you've got a low number of BAME female senior role models, you tend to end up calling on the same people to lead any initiative. How do you manage that time impact on those individuals and not hold them back? And it's always the same go-to people.
Yeah, so we do have a good range of diverse staff at HS2, but at the most senior levels, diversity is somewhat of a challenge. But around 30% of our SLT senior leadership team are women, and around 5 or 6% of our SLT are BAME. The direct feeder rates to those positions are very diverse. So 30% of our BAME population is in a feeder grade to one of those senior roles. So we have plenty of people to choose from. However, for our apprenticeship and graduate attraction, we don't necessarily use senior people to attract young people. We use the young people themselves. Those starting off their careers, those who have come into our apprenticeship or grad programs to talk about their experience. And often it's their experience which helps shape what we want to do in terms of attraction, messaging, etc. So it doesn't always have to be senior individuals. In our experience, we've had lots of success when we've had our apprenticeships. Our apprentices have profiles, lead recruitment, messaging, etc. Yes, look, it can be a burden if you are the only one, and therefore you're constantly out there. Sure, it can be an impact on those individuals, but I think my personal belief is, actually, if you're in that position, you have a sort of responsibility to lift as you climb.
Great, thank you. And we'll do one more for you, Mark, and I know there's a few others, but again, I'll try to pick up at the end. Fiona Keedy asks, when you've got blind auditions and so on, how do you manage large volumes of applicants? We've had this before. We did a whole event around when you're doing a large volume of people, how do you manage that and still give people, treat them well and give them, give them a positive experience even when they don't get the role?
Yeah, so Widening is a really good tool for volume applications. Everyone does the challenge anonymously, and then the algorithm against the sort of model answers sort of grades where everybody is, and there's some calibration that goes on with the recruitment team. But a feature of that is, number one, it's already built candidate confidence because they know they're going to get a fair crack at the whip. And the second is that there's feedback from the outcome of the auditions, which is generated automatically, but then is tweaked in some circumstances. Therefore, it saves a lot in terms of CV-based selection, etc. The candidates are happy because even if they haven't made it through the process, they will have had a look at the assessment, understood what skills they don't have, so they may drop out and attempt it the next year, etc. And if they go through the process, they're getting very honest, objective feedback about where they did well and areas to improve. So generally, it is a good tool for volume applications, particularly for resourcing teams, etc., who, if faced with a volume of applications, it's human nature, start to default to things they recognize, etc., etc. So for volume roles, it is a good tool to use.
Great, thank you. As I say, a few other questions in there, but I'll pick them up after our next speaker, who is Nathan Dennis. Nathan is Director of Legacy Consultants. Nathan and I actually, I came across Nathan because he and I are both part of something called the Youth Employment Group, which is a movement of lots and lots, over 100 organisations that have been corralled and brought together under the umbrella Youth Employment Group as a reaction to the whole current COVID crisis and the whole youth unemployment issue that's emerging from it. So it's loads of organisations coming together, reaching consensus, and a couple of the top organisations in it have been doing some really effective campaigning in at government level. And indeed, I think the recent announcement from Rishi Sunak, which perhaps we'll come to at the end, has certainly been shaped by some of that feedback and some of that pressure. And I think all this pressure on government from all the different angles has really, really created this momentum about people concerned about youth unemployment. These meetings are huge and they're all very frantic, and then Nathan spoke up at one, made a particular point, which I won't steal his thunder, and I just was instantly engaged and impressed. I thought he had a lot of really interesting things to say. So in true 5% Club style, I emailed him and said, do you want to speak at an event? And he said yes. So without further ado, Nathan, I'm going to hand over to you for your, what looks like a really, really engaging presentation.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody that's listening. Just so I know that we've got people still awake and listening, can you just type something into the chat, like hashtag BAME Apprentice, something just engaging, or hello, how are you? Just something engaging, because being online is just so hard. I love to be in rooms and engaging people. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity. Mark, very good points that you've made. I'm going to do a flip side that hopefully help people who are listening on this call. So I'm from Legacy Consultants. We specialize in BAME, stakeholder engagement, coming up with solutions and strategies via consultancy and training to help companies think more effectively, more creatively around how they engage with Black and ethnic minorities. And we do that, in different, mainly with public sector and some private sector clients. And I'm just going to give you a snapshot of some of the stuff we do, but also help you think around mindset stuff. So hopefully that will work. So if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, I love social media, absolutely love it. So if you want to follow me, use Nathan Dennis, Twitter, Justin Dennis. But the theme that I want to talk to you about briefly is around how do we navigate the new terrain. So if you're listening to me, just type into the chat, new terrain. Go on. I'll give you a few seconds.
Nathan, it's going mad. Everyone's typing in. Don't worry. Everyone's listening to you.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear. Navigating the new terrain. And hopefully by giving you a bit of this, you'll start to understand why there's barriers for Black and ethnic minority young people. Yeah. So let's just think about what's happened recently. So we've been in lockdown, COVID-19, and then smash, hashtag Black Lives Matters emerges because of the tragic killing of George Floyd. But what I want to do is try and give you a perspective of the psychology of how something like this can impact young Black youth and could actually impact when you're trying to give them opportunities, give them hope, give them a second chance, because psychologically there's things going on. So I want you to all imagine that we was on a big boat, a big ship, and we're traveling towards this iceberg. Now to our level, an iceberg looks humongous at a human level. But many times we forget that iceberg's like 10 times, 5 times bigger at the undersurface, beneath the surface level. And I want you to think about that when you're thinking about, you've put a poster out there saying, look, we've got this fantastic apprenticeship opportunity. But are you understanding the psychological mindset of the type of young people you're potentially engaging? So if you think about something like Black Lives Matter, right now, there's many young people who are feeling feelings of anxiety, feeling fear, feeling anger, feeling confusion. Some are feeling sad. Some could be feeling hopeless, and some could be feeling numb. But what you have to understand is outside of Black Lives Matter, there's been many things that have happened historically in their life experience, in their journey of life, that affects them and impacts them on a psychological and emotional level. So sometimes when we're trying to engage them with our campaigns or what we think in our boardroom meetings and our marketing planning meetings is a fantastic opportunity, if it's not hitting them on an emotional level, if they can't see themselves as this as like a real opportunity of hope, sometimes it would just land on deaf ears because they've got a lot of stuff happening psychologically, yeah? So these are just a little touch. I will go into this deeper. I'm just giving you a little taster, yeah? There's also this whole thing around when you're thinking about if you're engaging with millennials or Generation Z. So Generation Z, they're saying, is the first truly digital generation that were literally born with a laptop in their hand or a smartphone. I believe they've said that Moses baskets now have a fitted, instead of using the mobiles that used to have that spring around the children, you can actually attach a laptop or an iPad on the Moses basket, and young people can just look at a screen. So it's a truly first digital generation. How they consume information, the amount of time information lasts. So for instance, if you post something on YouTube and you do a nice YouTube clip around, oh, look at my amazing role model, and it's like 5 minutes long, they're used to consuming content that's like 15 seconds long, really high quality, because of the type of music they're listening, the type of content that they're looking at constantly. And I want to give you this quick Maslow's hierarchy of needs. For those who understand Maslow, we talk about the basic human needs is, food, water, shelter, then feeling safe, sense of belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization. But I'm putting a thought to you. You can giggle. If I was hearing you, hopefully someone's smiling. That actually in this new terrain, young people's key priority is not food and water, it's battery life and Wi-Fi. But there's a serious point to this. How do our messaging engage with those young people who are spending X amount of time on social media? Like, could anyone type in the group now and tell me what is the #1 TikTok song at the moment? I'd be impressed if you get it. For those who got kids, you probably will. So there's something about the way we work, and when we work with clients and we work with young people, and I just want to give you 2 principles from an independent evaluation that we had that says, you know what, Nathan, and your team, the thing that's making you guys different and effective is your usage of relatable role models. So I think Mark talked about it, or questions came through about having people that look like them in the organizations telling stories. It's phenomenally important. What's also important in terms of our companies and our organizations are you creating environments that are psychologically engaging and culturally informed spaces? That's very important. If they came to one of your open days, do you just have cold carrots? You know when you go to those buffets and it's like a carrot stick and some hummus. And if that's a young person's event, do you put the planning into all these meticulous things to make people, especially young people from Black and ethnic minorities, feel warm and welcome in your environment? So what we try and be as an organization is a bridge for you. Because the truth is, many young people are going through things on a psychological and an emotional level that we can't see. Trauma, depression, shame, doubt, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So if a young person who has the potential skills, has the skills that you need, but actually might have a bit of doubt or lacks confidence, how do you make sure that that's very clear in your messaging that you will be able to support them or you're the right organization to work with? So some of the stuff that we've done, in terms of the West Midlands, we've done something where we took the mayor of the West Midlands from the combined authority out onto the street, into community, and I'm a fan of outreach. Is literally getting your opportunities out into the streets, coming out of the boardroom, the planning room, going onto the street and trying to meet and engage with young people to share the opportunities. Because what the saddest thing is, and I'm having a conversation with Mark anyway, but just using HS2 as an example. HS2 from a business perspective is a phenomenal opportunity for the region. But the truth of the matter is, do young people who are, say, hanging outside KFC, Nando's, McDonald's, or wherever they are, know about these phenomenal opportunities? And we believe that organizations need to go onto the ground and do outreach. We also believe in the power of using focus groups. So some of the stuff we're doing at West Midlands Combined Authority was we took one of their campaigns and we pull it through a focus group with young Black people and said, what do you think about the messaging, about the imagery? And the young people says, oh my God, this is crap. Basically, I'm just like doing it quick because of time, but basically they didn't like the campaign. The organization thought the campaign was phenomenal, but the young people had a lot of feedback and said, you think you should do it like this? The imageries don't talk to me. The messaging doesn't speak to me. And West Midlands Combined Authority learned a lot from that focus group. So I would always encourage, do focus groups with young people that you're trying to engage with to test your ideas and your thoughts. In a completely different world, but just to show you why it matters, the question I want to ask everyone is, are you relatable? So I'm going to give you a quick example from another world. This is a picture of the Avengers cast. Historically, throughout the years, in terms of movie superheroes have always been white. But when the Black Panther came out, it had a massive global shift and impact, especially in the Black and ethnic minority community. I'm going to show you what happened on social media. If you can see that post in the middle, it says, I just cried in the middle of the theater because I saw a little boy pointing excitedly at the Black Panther poster around, screaming, look at me, he looks like me, he looks like me. I want to talk about, in your organization, representation matters. What do I see when I go onto your websites? How does it look? For Michelle Obama, it says, congrats to the whole Black Panther team. Because of you, young people will finally see superheroes that look like them on the big screen. I love this movie. I know it will inspire people from all backgrounds to dig deep and find the courage to be heroes in their own stories. I'm using a different world, but you can use some of the methodology in terms of representation and making sure in your campaigns and your marketing is fitting. So I'm leaving you these questions to think about. Are you using the right vehicle, the methods and approaches when you're thinking about engaging BAME young people onto your apprenticeship opportunities? So I'm Nathan Dennis. I'm from Legacy Consultants. We can help you with training, helping you to facilitate honest conversations, help you with your positive action, also help you with your stakeholder engagement. And yeah, I truly believe that together we can make a difference. That's just a taster from me.
Nathan, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I did promise people that Nathan was going to be engaging. And as someone who loves a carrot and a hummus stick, I completely can see what you're talking about. It's now 10 to 1, and I'm conscious we've got 10 minutes left. I'm happy to ask specific questions of Nathan. I can't spot anything yet, but because of Nathan's call out to everyone to post, there's an awful lot of things going in there. And Nathan, you'll have to look in chat to see who got the answer right about the TikTok #1 song. But
No problem.
if I may go back slightly earlier to some of the questions and then start fielding them to everyone. Really great question from Hugh Chapman. Yeah, one of the key influences, and this is true for everyone that we're talking about, one of the key influences for apprentices, young people, are parents. You know, how do you target parents, and what do you do? How do you, I guess, get that? And I know Paul was alluding to this, but how do you get that whole family unit engaged and involved and interested in this? So Nathan, do you want to kick off on that? Because we haven't.
Yeah. So if, for instance, I'm going to speak from a, like, we're not in COVID lockdown kind of situation. It's when you do your open days, is making it like family friendly. That you're inviting the whole family to understand the organization. So I remember having a conversation with Brig or Boig, I can't pronounce their name properly, but I was talking to them about just the timings of your events. Are they in the evening? The music you use, the food, is it like content that's going to engage not just the young person, but the family, to know that, you know, you're interested in, you know, bringing transformation to the whole family. So I just think it's about the messaging. Don't just always think, oh, young people, because harsh reality is, especially if you engage with young people who's experienced like long-term unemployment and they're coming from family of worklessness, you've got to try and get them on board, because the harsh reality and things that I would have talked about is the impact of social media. The harsh reality is that many young people from our perspective that we work with, they're not really interested in apprenticeships because they don't look as attractive as when they're looking on Instagram, the rapper or the musician or the sports personality. They want this quick money and they want it quick. And that's some of the stuff around the new terrain that we've got to tackle.
That's great, thank you. I'll move on to another question rather than get all panelists to answer each one, because I think we're short of time. I mean, this is an interesting one, and Paul, I think it's something you alluded to. Hines Building Services asked earlier on, should we be paying the living wage for apprentices? They partnered with a college who was pushing the minimum wage, and they talk about Hines wanted to talk about a fair wage. I mean, any thoughts on that? It's a difficult one, that wage piece, but any thoughts from your point of view, Paul?
Well, at a minimum, the living wage, but this goes back to if we want to give something equal significance, we want to say this is a brilliant opportunity with all the credibility of a different pathway like university or, you know, academic qualifications in that way, then we have to make it attractive. And there are challenges for businesses. It's not to say that, you know, businesses have all budgets to do this, but if you want to offer these opportunities to young people, you need to pay fair and well if you really want to give a young person an opportunity to turn their lives around, to sustain that opportunity and even get to it. You know, things like traveling to an opportunity, there are all sorts of barriers that people face. So the answer is yes, but more than that. That's what we should be driving, you know. Okay,
thanks. A question from Colleen McKnight of Schneider Electric. What's the best route to find schools and colleges to recruit from? Schneider are very keen to be more targeted, you know, building strong relationships with schools, colleges, so that they get to understand the Schneider Electric business and help change focus when recruiting to better represent society we live in. I mean, Mark, has HS2 got any particular strategies around reaching those schools and colleges?
Yes, we do have both secondary and primary programs. The schools that are engaged with us for those are linked to the HS2 route, but those with high levels of diversity and also levels of disadvantage. So we are engaging with those schools up and down the route to help that. I think the point about sort of using diverse media and using your young people to promote that is really very important. You know, there's only so much weight that the corporate voice lends. If I say HS2 is a fantastic place to work for, you know, diverse groups, we're really focused on EDI, this, that, and the other. Frankly, a lot of young people just don't care about listening to me. what they do respond to is their own peers saying, this is a place to work. I am getting opportunity. I'm getting paid while I'm learning. You know, people treat me respectfully. There's room for me to learn, etc., etc. So the platforms are important. The schools you engage with are important. But it's not just about schools engagement. It is very important, and we do have a big program of that. But that authentic voice, I think, is one of the real drivers for us. And it's great for us because the more of these diverse cohorts we have, the bigger the multiplier effect and the more we can do. So yes, we engage with schools which have, which are in areas of disadvantage or along the route, have diverse cohorts, and then we do have specific programs for that, which promote careers in engineering or STEAM, science, technology, engineering, maths, and art, etc. So we do all of that, but that's not necessarily intrinsically linked to everyone that comes through our apprenticeship program.
And I know someone was very interested, I'm just trying to find it, about the particular software tool you were talking about that you use. Is that something you can tell us what it is, what it's called, or is it a state secret?
No state secret. Absolutely. The tool we use is called Gap Jumpers.
Right.
It's an American-based technology platform.
It's called Gap Jumpers, is that what you said?
That's
great. Thanks. Great question again from Christian Elliott at Network Rail. It's something we've been hearing a lot about during lockdown, and I'm really aware of it. And we're hearing about digital poverty, which given Nathan your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which did bring a smile to my face when I saw it. It was, in a way, a very funny slide, but has got a more serious side to it. If we think that whole digital piece, that how can people apply for jobs, etc., and engage without sufficient digital ability. In your experience, Nathan, or the groups you've worked with, do you come across that digital poverty?
Yeah, it definitely does come up. Sometimes I forget myself. Even I've been working with a lot of young people over the years, and I forget that sometimes young people don't actually have the means to have a smartphone. Some of them do, but the ones who don't and are using like an old school phone, Nokia, sorry, no offense if anyone from Nokia, or an older school phone, Motorola or something like that, you can't access websites on that phone. And sometimes we just assume that everyone's got Wi-Fi in their houses, or many young people, if they do have a smartphone, they're on pay-as-you-go contracts type of thing. They're not on a contract to pay-as-you-go, and sometimes they don't have credit, so they can't access their phones until they get into a free Wi-Fi zone. So there's all of those things to consider. And even on a quick perspective, in our independent evaluation for one of our specific projects, it talked about the significant risk factors that young people face from certain communities. And it talked about poverty, it talked about homelessness, it talked about adverse school experiences. Like there's a whole list of things, living in unsafe neighborhoods, a whole list of risk factors that affect young people. So sometimes we just need to understand the context of the type of young people that you potentially engage in. And that's not to say that all young people from BAME communities are at all those risk factors, but you just need to be aware of it.
No, thanks. I think the digital poverty piece, I think, well, that's going to be something that we're going to hear a lot more about, and hopefully organisations to do a lot more about. It's 2 minutes before we finish, and we haven't got through every single question. David McCormack's made a valid point. Offering apprenticeships and work experience to students in college, they need a greater understanding, and parents, push the university option as they don't understand that apprenticeships, are a great segue into working and earning and indeed a job. And people think jobs only come from university degrees. I think a lot of people this summer will be discovering jobs aren't coming from university degrees, very sadly. And Tony Ellender, Balfour-Beatty's made a point about, we've also got to think about the non-school community and youth groups. It leaves me 1 more minute just to say thank you to our fantastic speakers, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today, all the attendees. I also need to give a call out and a thank you to Brian Reddick, who's our IT person helping, because without him, I definitely wouldn't have been able to sort this out. Just a reminder, the event is going to be available online. We'll get adapted presentations out for everyone. And if you aren't a member, sign up to our movement today. I will be in contact with you. So thank you, everyone. I think we've had some very positive comments posted in the chat. People saying great session, really engaging, and people saying someone's just said they feel really engaged and motivated, which is great to hear. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you all on another 5% Club event. Bye bye.